Hi everyone, I'm Spiro for NewsBud.com. We have breaking news. This morning, on Monday, October 16th, 2017, Malta's best-known investigative journalist, Daphne Galizia, known for exposing government corruption, said goodbye to her family and left her home. The journalist got into her car and it exploded when a car bomb went off. Hearing the explosion, one of her sons rushed to the car to find his mother, the investigative journalist, was killed in that fiery explosion. Condolences to the family. Daphne Galizia was openly critical of top politicians, including the Prime Minister of her home country, Malta, accusing them of corruption. She was named on a list of 28 people shaping, shaking, and stirring Europe in 2017. Just 2 weeks before the journalist was killed, she had filed a complaint with police that she had been receiving threats. Now, this story just broke, and a few media outlets reporting on this are implying that this murder may be politically driven, and is only limited to Malta. But there is much more to this story, as this journalist was getting too close to something much bigger, and she was assassinated for it. This story connects to Malta's role as one of the main hubs for offshore banking and money laundering for Operation Gladio B, and Malta's connection to Azerbaijan and its role in heroin trafficking and weapons trafficking, supplying weapons to terrorist groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda under the CIA and NATO's Operation Gladio B. NewsBud was the only independent media with in-depth, extensive coverage on Azerbaijan's role in all of this and exposed those responsible, going on record naming names. This story also connects to the Panama Papers and much more. Now, joining me is the woman who first exposed Operation Gladio B and put Azerbaijan on the map in 2004 as a main operations hub for Gladio B. The founder and editor of NewsBud.com, former FBI whistleblower Sibel Edmonds. Sibel, what's your take on this story?
Before anything, I want to express my condolences to Daphne Galizia's family. This is a shocking news. Beginning in 2005-2006, I began exposing not only Azerbaijan's role, but the three main offshore banking centers for Operation Gladio B: Cyprus, Dubai, and Malta. In some ways, the Panama Papers partially exposed Malta's role as a banking center for money laundering. However, Panama Papers doesn't even begin to touch the real role of Malta for almost 2 decades as part of Operation Gladio B, operating as the financial money laundering center along with Dubai and Cyprus. I see that the mainstream media report so far, from what we have seen, focuses on Daphne Galizia's exposure of the local politician, including the Prime Minister of Malta. But this case goes way beyond corruption. Daphne got too close to the heart of Operation Gladio B's operations. And this is right after the exposure that we covered at NewsBud dealing with Azerbaijan's role and Silkway. And this was something that Operation Gladio B could not tolerate. And we have been seeing the most drastic measure that can be taken against any investigative journalist. And this is a plain assassination using car bomb to blow up a journalist that got to just too close to the heart of Operation Gladio B. With this assassination, what we are looking at is a chilling message from the Operation Gladio B to any investigative journalist or investigative blogger that dares to get too close to this operation and its exposure.
NewsBud will have a more in-depth report on this story coming up exclusively for NewsBud community members. If you're not already a member, make sure you sign up today. I'd like to thank Sibel Edmonds, and thank you all for your support. For NewsBud.com, I'm Spiro.
Greetings, my fellow free-blood sovereign thinkers. This is LL3's newest podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangroves of South Florida, and today's date is Monday, October 16th, 2017. Yes, it's going to be Tuesday morning in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I just got this immediately on Twitter, and it is a real shame what happened to one of the courageous journalists out there. thing that really gets me for Daphne Galizia, who had the courage to go a lot further than what they want anyone else to know. This is disturbing. This is another example of the war on journalism, war on journalists and journalism and press. Probably the biggest mistake these parasites have done. They just expose themselves for what they are. Tyrannical pieces of garbage. New World Order scumbags. I'm not afraid to say that to anyone with that mindset, those attributes. Pure breed garbage. One thing I can say this about Daphne Galizia: she did not die in vain. And these sons of bitches will be exposed big time. So what I'm going to be doing is definitely have the link for News Buds on this. I'd like to thank Spiro Sakura and Isabel Edmonds for addressing it. And if you're not a member yet of this community network, I encourage you to do so. You won't be disappointed. No corporate funding, no sugar daddies, nonpartisan bias. When it comes to tyranny, that's what they focus on. Political corruption, geopolitical politics, and many others. That affects every single one of us on this planet. I'll just read one of the links here from the show notes. It's from the Daily Sabah in Europe. And it says a journalist investigating corruption in Malta killed by car bombing. A high-profile Maltese journalist investigating the corruption allegations in Malta, nicknamed the one-woman WikiLeaks, was killed in a suspected car bomb on a Monday, Prime Minister Joseph Muscat confirmed. Daphne Caruana Galizia, a blogger and newspaper columnist, was killed when an explosive device, believed to be a bomb, ripped through a car at 3 p.m. or 1300 GMT. Police on the scene told the Times of Malta newspaper that they had identified a burnt body in the car as hers. Caruana Galizia's husband and son were on site as police combed the site after the blast. According to the state TV, she filed a police report 15 days ago saying she had been threatened. In a statement to the press, Muscat condemned the barbaric act and said he will not rest until the perpetrators are caught. Everyone knows Miss Caruana Galizia was a harsh critic of mine, both politically and personally. Nobody can justify this barbaric act in any way, he said. He called for national unity, saying everyone has a right to write and say what they want in this country. Caruana Galizia caused a stir when she published an article stating that a company mentioned in the Panama Papers leaked, organized by WikiLeaks, belonged to Muscat's wife. A claim the Prime Minister has called a lie. The government of Malta had already been caught up in the Panama Papers scandal before Caruana Galizia's articles with documents revealing that Energy Minister Conrad Mizzi, a Muscat's cabinet chief, Keith Sembry, had created their own secret companies in Panama. Caruana Galizia was described by the media outlet as political as one-woman WikiLeaks, crusading against untransparency and corruption in Malta, when she was named along this list of the 28 people shaking, and stirring Europe in 2017. Mrs. Galizia legacy will move on. To all of our brothers and sisters out there who are investigative journalists, do not live in fear. Be vigilant, of course. Be aware. Be aware on your surroundings. But don't let this scare you by any means. We all have those natural reactions, but one thing for sure, action conquers fear. Probably one of the biggest mistakes they made within that part of the country, and maybe the world. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a inside job, criminal elements in the Malta government involved on this horrific event. So folks out there, even in Malta, unify and start calling these parasites out. There is a lot more of you in them. May our soul be forever free. Daphne There's other footnotes on here as well. Even some admins did one on the Azerbaijan Operation Gladio B. So, and she was considered a whistleblower. They're an FBI whistleblower. There's a lot of stuff in here on this good amount of footnotes. So please check it out and share it to everyone you know. Alright, well, there's other things I'm going to be planning to do originally today. And earlier, my show was a little bit shoddy. It looks like the mic wasn't really working with me. So I scrapped it. I'm going to refine it for tonight. And, you know, just a better environment out here instead of in the library. Too much like the water running in that building interfered with my signal. So go on here. Came from the Miami Herald. And it's interesting. This big fear factor with the gentleman Richard Spencer, to call him white nationalist, tribalist, whatever you want to call him, who is the head of the National Policy Institute, described as the self-described creator of the term alt-right. Florida governor declares a state of emergency before white nationalist speaks at UF, the University of Florida. This is by Stephen Biscuit, Herald Times, Tallahassee Bureau. Governor Scott on Monday declared a state of emergency in Alachua County 3 days ahead of a scheduled speech at the University of Florida campus in Gainesville by white nationalist Richard Spencer. I find that the threat of a potential emergency is imminent, Scott said in the 7-page executive order, which I'm going to read that to you for sure. Scott placed West Mall, the recent promoted 29-year-old interim state emergency management director, as a state coordinator officer for the duration of this emergency, including giving Mall the authority to deploy law enforcement officers and to suspend state laws if necessary. Suspend state laws if necessary. See how far that goes. Mall had been chief of staff at DEM to Brian Kuhn, who resigned October 1st for a job in this private sector. Governor's Order number 17-264 gives all state agencies the power to suspend rules and regulations, including for purchasing, travel, and personal actions. Scott also activated his authority as governor to spend surplus money as he deems necessary. So the question I have, does this will affect the Floridians' Declaration of Rights under Article 1 of the Florida Constitution? In a statement, Scott said, "We live in a country where everyone has a right to voice their opinion. However, we have zero tolerance for violence and public safety is always our number one priority. I have been in constant contact with Sheriff Dano, who has requested this executive order to ensure that county law enforcement have every needed resource. This executive order is an additional step to ensure that the University of Florida and the entire community is prepared so everyone can stay safe." Of course, there's a video in here. A woman asked Richard Spencer, "What is it like to get punched in the face?" Our attendee at the speaking event featuring white supremacist Richard Spencer at Auburn University on April 18th initially asked Spencer to define how white people are more racially oppressed than black people. Her second question was, how did it feel when you got punched in the face at the inauguration? The order activates Florida Mutual's aid plan to allow state and the sheriff's office to quickly coordinate research from other state, county, and municipal law enforcement agencies, Scott's office said. So they can get resources from other state, county, municipal law enforcement. Okay, so city, county, state. So it'll be a state thing, state law enforcement, all that. The governor's orders designated the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, FDLE, as lead agency for crisis management. FDLE Commissioner Rick Sariagan reports to Scott and the 3 elected cabinet members. Scott's ordered noted that prior speeches by Spencer in Virginia, Alabama, California, and Texas have sparked protests and counter-protests, resulting in episodes of violent civil unrest and multiple arrests. Yeah. I don't know why people want to get so sensitive towards this individual. And you got something to get these stupid folks. That's how so people's got to start laughing at them. That's how you look at it. But toss firecrackers around these Nazis and they'll shoot themselves. I was like, nah, don't even do that. Just gotta start laughing at these jerk-offs. And don't get me wrong when we talk about how the whites are being suppressed. People are being members or victims of tyranny one way or another. And out of this video, John McCain receives the Liberty Medal from Joe Biden. Oh, up yours. Bunch of CFR douchebags. Excuse me. I just got distracted there. So what I want to do here is go to Rick Scott's website, floridagov.com. It's flgov.com. Came out today. Governor Rick Scott directs resources following request from Alachua County Sheriff. Following a request from Alachua County Sheriff Sadi Darno, Governor Rick Scott today signed Executive Order 17-264 to assist local enforcement's response to rallies planned on the University of Florida campus this Thursday. EO 17-264 activates the Florida Mutual Aid Plan, which allows the state and Sheriff Darnell to quickly coordinate resources from the other state, county, and municipal enforcement agencies. You see the order themselves. I'll do that in a moment. Governor Scott remains in constant communication with state and local law enforcement and university leadership to ensure that every request to the state is quickly granted to keep the public safe. Governor Rick Scott said, we live in a country that everyone has a right to an opinion. However, we have zero tolerance for violence, and public safety is always our #1 priority. I have been in constant contact with Sheriff Darnell, who has requested this executive order to ensure that the county and local law enforcement have every needed resource. This executive order is an additional step to ensure that the University of Florida and the entire community is prepared so everyone can stay safe. Let's just read the executive order, shall we? Yep, it's going. Yeah, so, one moment. It's a PDF format. A little interesting there. Looks like trying to be safe, trying to do this and do that. But there's a lot of questions about suspending laws. Ooh, that's the thing that's really touchy. What laws he can suspend in his county? That is, I find, a big question mark in my mind. One big question. I'm just waiting for the PDF format to come out. Yes, and it is. Hey, okay. EO 17-264. Let's just do that. Come on, open up. You have to open Sesame. And this goes doo-doo-doo. There you go. Hey, beautiful. All right, so let's just perfect. This is what it says. State of Florida, Office of the Governor, Executive Order, number 17-264. On October 19th, whereas on October 19, 2017, Rich Spencer is scheduled to speak at the Phillips Center for the Performing Arts at the University of Florida. And whereas prior speaking engagements involving Mrs. Spencer at universities in Alabama, California, Texas, and Virginia have sparked protests and counter-protests resulting in episodes of violent civil unrest and multiple arrests. And whereas Alachua County Sheriff Sadi Darnell has requested the assistance of the state of Florida through its executive order to implement a coordinated approach for planning, managing, and implementing law enforcement responses and support services, including specialty teams and resources that would otherwise be unavailable. And whereas to ensure that the state and local entities are sufficiently prepared to deal with any security and safety issues related to speaking engagement, there is a need to implement and cooperate and coordinated security plan among state and local law enforcement agencies. And whereas the implementation of contingency plans and ongoing related actions are required to protect critical infrastructure in the state, to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Floridians and those visiting our state, and to safeguard public and private property. Now, therefore, I, Rick Scott, Governor of the State of Florida, by the powers vested in me by the Constitution and the law of the State of Florida, I do hereby the following executive order shall take immediate effect. Section 1, because of the foregoing conditions and to provide for the necessary and appropriate coordinations of state and local law enforcement resources, I find the threat of a potential emergency is imminent and hereby declare a state of emergency for Alachua County. Section 2, to ensure that safety and public security will be safeguarded and critical infrastructure and private property will be protected, I hereby activate the Florida Mutual Aid Plan. Pursuant to Chapter 23, Florida Statute, and other applicable plans is required by Section 252.36, subsection 3A, Florida Statutes. Look it up. 3. In accordance with the State Comprehensive Energy Plan, CEMP, I designated the Florida Department of Law Enforcement as the lead agency for crisis management actions to prevent and or end any violations of law, and Division of Energy Emergency Management as the lead agency for consequence management actions to respond impacts of any violations of law. I hereby designate the Director of the Division of Emergency Management as the state coordinating officer for the duration of this emergency and direct him to execute the state comprehensive emergency management plan and other response, recovery, and mitigation plans necessary to cope with the emergency. Pursuant to Section 252.36-1A, 1A, which is subsections, Florida statutes, I delegate the state coordinating officer the authority to exercise their powers delineated in sections 252.36, 5, subsections 5 through 10. Florida statutes, which he shall exercise as needed to meet this emergency, subject to the limitations of sections 252.33, Florida statutes, and exercising the powers delegated by this power, the state coordinating officer shall confer with the governor to the fullest extent practicable. State coordinating shall also have the authority to A. invoke and administer emergency management assistance compact. Sections 252.921 to 933 Florida statutes. Other compacts and agreements existing between the state of Florida and other states, and the further authority to coordinate the allocation of resources for such other states that are made available to Florida under such compacts and agreements as to meet this emergency. B. Seek direct assistance and enter into agreements with any and all agencies of the U.S. government as may be needed to meet the emergency. C. Direct all state, regional, and local governmental agencies, including law enforcement agencies, to identify personnel needed from those agencies to assist in meeting to needs created by this emergency, to place all such personnel under direct command and coordination of the State Coordinating Office to meet this emergency except as otherwise specifically provided by executive order. D. Designate deputy state coordinating officers. E. Suspend the effect of any statute, rule, or order that would in any prevent and hinder or delay any mitigation, response, or recovery action necessary to cope with this emergency. So, suspend the effect of any statute, rule, or order. So, I'm just wondering if that could be a firearm free zone. They could use that at the University of Florida, which is a state-run facility. And I'm not saying being gung-ho, moving crazy, things like that. But if it's necessary to defend yourselves and family, because the police in Florida aren't obligated to protect you as an individual under Florida Statute 762.28. That may be it. Look it up. It's not immune to liability. E. Enter orders as may be needed to implement any of the foregoing powers. However, the requirements of sections 252.46 and 120.54 subsection 4 Florida statutes do not apply to any such orders by such coordinating officer. Section 4, in accordance with the Florida Mutual Aid Plan, I hereby order Executive Director of the Florida Department of Law Enforcement to direct state and local law enforcement resources after consultation with the governor and after reasonably considering the advice and needs of local law enforcement agencies. I hereby grant the director the authority to exercise the powers to perform the functions enumerated in this order in sections 23.1231 Florida statutes. I get some water, sorry about that. 5. I direct that each local law enforcement responding beyond the officer's normal jurisdiction pursuant to the Florida Mutual Aid Plan, this executive order shall enjoy the same power, privileges, and immunities, including law enforcement authority, as if the officer was performing duties inside the officer's jurisdiction while acting under the Mutual Aid Plan and provisions set forth in this executive order. I declare that the powers, privileges, and immunities, duties, and law enforcement authority contemplated under the Florida Mutual Aid Act, including sections 23.1225 and 23.127 Florida statute, shall be deemed to be conferred on law enforcement officers responding under this executive order. Section 6. I hereby order the Adjutant General to activate the Florida National Guard as needed to deal with this emergency, and I directed the Adjutant General to coordinate with the executive order of the Florida Department of Law Enforcement for security missions and assignments while this executive order or any extension thereof remain in effect. Section 7. I find the special duties and responsibilities resting upon some state, regional, and local agencies and other governmental bodies in responding to the emergency may require them to waive or deviate from statutes, rules, ordinances, and orders they administer. Therefore, I issue the following authorizations. A. Pursuant to section 252.36 1A, Florida statutes, the executive office of the governor may waive all statutes and rules affecting budgeting to the extent necessary to provide budget authority for state agencies to cope with this emergency. Requirements of sections 252.46 and 120.554, subsection 4. Florida statutes do not apply to any such waiver issued by executive order of the governor. B. Each state agency may suspend the provisions of any regulatory statute prescribing procedures for conduct of state businesses or of order rules of the agency if strict compliance with the provision of any such statute, order, or rule would in any way prevent, hinder, or delay action with coping with the emergency. This includes, but is not limited to, the authority to suspend all statutes, rules, ordinances, and orders which affect leasing, printing, purchasing, travel, and the conditions of employment and compensation of employees. That's no question mark there, right? Absolutely. For the purpose of the executive order, necessary action to cope with the emergency means an emergency mitigation, response, or recovery action. 1. Prescribed a state comprehensive emergency management plan, or 2. Directed by the state coordinating officer. Any waiver of statutes, rules, ordinances, or orders shall be by emergency, rule, or order in accordance with sections 120.54, subsection 4, and 252.46 Florida statutes, and shall expire 30 days from the date of this executive order. 30 days. So probably just the order in that area may be good for a good month after he leaves. Think about that. Unless extended in increments of more than 30 days by this agency, and no event shall remain in effect beyond the early of the date expiration of this order as extended on or 90 days from the date of issuance of this order. I think they'll wait for November 4th too. That's why they probably did it, to extend it in that time. Say allegedly. In accordance with Section 252.38 Florida statutes, each political subdivision within the state of Florida may waive the procedures and formalities otherwise require the political subdivision by law pertaining to performance of public work and take whatever prudent action is necessary to ensure the health, safety, and welfare of the community. 2. Entering contracts. 3. Incurring obligations. 4. Employment of permanent and temporary workers. 5. Utilization of volunteer workers. 6. Rental of equipment. 7. Acquisition and distribution with or without competition of supplies, materials, and facilities. And 8. Appropriation and expenditure of public funds. D. All state emergencies responsible for the use of state buildings and facilities may close such buildings and facilities in those portions of the state affected by this emergency to extent to meet this emergency. I direct each state agency to report the closure of any state building or facility to the Secretary of Department of Management Services under the authority contained in Section 252.36 Florida statutes. Direct each county to report the closure of any building, facility operated or maintained by the county or any political subdivision therein to the Secretary of the Department of Management Services. Furthermore, I direct the Secretary of Department of Management Services to 1. Maintain the accurate and up-to-date list of all such closures, and 2. Provide that list daily to the state coordinating officer. Section 8. I find that demands placed upon the funds appropriated to the agencies of the state of Florida and to local agencies are unreasonably great and may be inadequate to pay cost of coping with this disaster. In accordance with Section 252.337, subsection 2, Florida statutes, I direct that sufficient funds may be available as needed by transferring or expending monies appropriate for other purposes, monies from unappropriate surplus funds, or from the Budget Stabilization Fund. 9. All state agencies and entering emergencies, final orders, or other final actions is in response to this emergency shall advise the state coordinating officer contemporaneously or as soon as practicable. 10. Nothing in this order shall prevent local jurisdiction in any area not declared to be under state of emergency by executive order for taking prompt and necessary action to save lives and protect property of the citizens. 11. All action being taken by the Director of the Division of Emergency Management with respect to this emergency before the issuance of this executive order are ratified. This executive order shall expire 7 days from this date unless extended. So, based on this, next Sunday it will expire until it's necessary. So, actually till the 22nd. 22nd. 23rd, excuse me. Rick Scott signed it. Well, interesting. A little bit sketchy, I would say. You have to look at the statutes themselves. Definitely read this on your own time. But, sorry about that, just yawned. But one thing you gotta look at, my friends, especially when it comes to something like this, just be leery, be cautious. They may suspend areas of declaration of rights, which they better be really cautious because this could burn them. And it's funny because I was watching some of his videos and just scoping out some of the websites and all that. He talked about how the Caucasians, the white man, the white community, the white folk, the Europeans are being deprived. Some we call it white genocide. And don't get me wrong, because I've been keeping tabs of certain areas of the world in this topic. This is going on with South Africa and even Zimbabwe. Border genocide looks like it's still going on. It's not long, like massive, but slowly. Trying to do that, and of course, what's going on, what happened in Europe with the whole refugee status, trying to bring them all in. The European Union, bring them in, you know, and destroying that area's livelihood, culture, heritage, etc. And I'm not just saying, oh, they're the only ones. It's just an example of what's been happening. Club of Rome want to manifest on these things. So yeah, Spencer may have some merit in those areas, but doesn't mean I'm going to believe his solutions or support it. This is one thing I'm real concerned with. The people out there are going to go out there real angry, screaming, calling them Nazis and beat people up and trying to shut the damn event down. Don't even think about that. Because if you do that, shut them down, you find them be victorious, only thing you're doing is throwing more fuel to the fire. People will be inspired by that. That would be claimed to be suppressed. Hey, let's check this guy out. You'll be promoting his cause if you censor him or deprive him or make him a political prisoner. Two good examples, Adolf Hitler and Fidel Castro. They got deprived. People listened. People start following. Boom, look what happened. So the truth of the matter is, let them speak. Don't scream and yell at the top of your lungs. Give them straight up questions. Legitimate ones. Test them. Exercise your free speech. Remember, freedom is the way to defeat subversified ideologies. There's nothing wrong being proud of your heritage, including the European heritage. Nothing wrong with that at all. You're going to have those dodo brains out there going to attempt to say, oh, you're white privilege. Completely irrelevant, null and void. Everyone's rights are natural born, regardless of what you look like. You all were born free. Don't get caught in the mind control hype, the psyops. I'm expecting infiltrators and provocateurs maybe getting involved to stir up trouble and being paid by the feds if possible. I noticed that with Charlottesville. Social engineering at its finest. I'm not the only one that noticed it too. So the people that going up there to hear him speak, protest, don't deprive his natural born rights of free speech. Because if you do, then you're part of the problem, not the solution. And even Frederick Douglass will agree on it. I know if I've used this quote before, I'll use it again on free speech, and he said it right on target too. And I know it's a little bit slow on the computer, but if you deprive it, you're hurting your natural born rights. It becomes a cancer. To suppress free speech is a double wrong. It violates the rights of the hearer as well as those of the speaker. Frederick Douglass, African American, proud of what he stood for. Just let you folks know. You can't call me a racist. But enough of that. I know I've been digressing on here. Okay, cool. So I'm going to take a little chill break. I'll be right back. Alright. So, enough of that. On the whole Rick Scott ordeal. Next one here. Came out yesterday. Consortium News. This one's entitled How Netanyahu Pulls Trump Strings. All you Trump supporters may not like it, but you gotta be vigilant, my friends. Says here by Rod Perry, in the final presidential debate of 2016, Hillary Clinton famously called Donald Trump the puppet of Russian President Vladimir Putin. But what's increasingly clear that Trump has a more typical puppet master for a U.S. politician. It's really Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Since September 18th, when the two men met in New York around the United Nations General Assembly, Netanyahu has been pulling Trump's strings on almost every foreign policy issue. Arguably, the puppeteer relationship began much earlier, but I've been told that Donald Trump riddled early on at Netanyahu's control and even showed a few signs of rebellion. For instance, Trump initially resisted Netanyahu's demand for a deeper U.S. commitment in Syria by ordering the shutdown of the CIA operations supporting anti-government rebels, along with the Trump administration's statement that U.S. policy has no longer sought regime change in Damascus. Immediately after the announcement, Netanyahu had some success in getting Trump to reverse direction and 59 Tomahawk missiles at the Syrian air base on April 6th. The attack followed what one intelligence source told me was staged chemical weapons incident by Al-Qaeda operatives in the rebel-controlled town of Khan Sheikhoun in Idlib province, possibly using sarin delivered via drone from a Israeli special operations base in Jordan. Yet, although apparently duped by the subterfuge into a missile strike, Trump still backed a complete reversal of his Syrian policy. During May, Trump picked Saudi Arabia and Israel as his first overseas trip as president, essentially following his advice of his son-in-law Jared Kushner. But I'm told he came away feeling somewhat humiliated by the over-top treatment that involved him getting pulled in a ceremonial sword dance in Saudi Arabia, facing condemnation from Netanyahu. So over the summer, Trump listened to advice about possible major overhaul of U.S. foreign policy. And the train's coming by, so hang tight here. That checked Israeli-Saudi regional ambitions, opened diplomatic doors to Iran, and addressed the Korean crisis by brokering negotiations between the North and South over some form of loose confederation. There was even the possibility of a Nixon goes to China moment, with tough guy Trump meeting with Iranian President Hassan Rouhani and two countries restoring diplomatic ties in a process that would have given the company a better chance to complete the Iranian market. Those proposed moves had the advantage of reducing international tensions, saving the U.S. government money on future military ventures and freeing U.S. corporations from the tangle of economic sanctions. Exactly the American First strategy that Trump had promised his working class base. How cute is that, right? However, instead, Netanyahu succeeded in pulling Trump's strings during their conversations on September 18th in New York, although exactly how still is a mystery to some people close to these developments. One source said Kirshner family real estate company has exposure to substantial financing that could be yanked. Although Jared Kirshner's final disclosure firm only lists $5 million on unsecured line of credit, no jointly with his father from the Israel Discount Bank. Trump has also has major pro-Netanyahu donors to his political war chest and his legal defense fund, who are strong advocates for war with Iran, including casino tycoon Sheldon Adelson, who has plowed $35 million to the pro-Trump Super PAC Future 45 and has publicly called for dropping nuclear bomb on Iran as a negotiating tactic. So Netanyahu had a number of potential strings to pull going on rants. Whatever the precise reasons, on September 19th, Trump turned his speech to the UN General Assembly to a more like rant, personally insulting North Korean leader Kim Jong-un as Rocket Man threatening to totally destroy his nation of 25 people and parodying Netanyahu's call for another game regime change projected aimed at Iran. Interesting, right? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Most diplomats in the audience sat in stunned silence as Trump threatened aggressive war from the podium of an organization created to prevent the scourge of war. Notable exception was Netanyahu, who enthusiastically applauded his success in jerking Trump into the neocon camp. So rather than shift U.S. policy away from confrontation, Trump jettisoned the diplomatic strategy, although it already had dispatched intermediaries to make contact with the Iranians and North Koreans. Instead, Trump opted for the classic neocon approach favored by Netanyahu, albeit with Trump dressing up his neocon surrender in some American First rhetoric. The UN speech had left some U.S. intermediaries scrambling to explain to their contacts in Iran and North Korea why Trump has redeployed the messages that they have been carrying privately. Trump explained to just one that just like to zigzag and that he intended to end point hadn't changed. Some of these tensions surfaced in late September when Secretary of State Rex Tillerson took the extraordinary step of announcing the behind-the-scenes contacts with North Korea during a state visit to China. We are probing, so stay tuned, Tillerson said. We asked, would you like to talk? We have lines of communications in Pyongyang. We're not in a dark situation. A blackout, Tillerson said. We had 3 channels open to Pyongyang. We do talk to them directly. We have our own channels. In reaction to Tillerson's efforts to salvage a black channel initiative, Trump showed that his abstinence to Netanyahu and the neocons outweighed loyalty to the Secretary of State for the intermediaries who ventured into dicey situations on Trump's behalf. In Twitter messages, Trump belittled the idea of a dialogue with North Korea, tweeting, I told Rex Tillerson, our wonderful Secretary of State, that he's wasting his time trying to negotiate with little Rocket Man. Save your energy, Rex, Trump added, before slipping into another thinly veiled threat of a military strike. We'll do what has to be done. That's what he says with a Scotch exclamation mark. Sorry about that. Well, on the surface, Trump's resignation of Tillerson might have been viewed as another zigzag. It's now clear that Trump's zigzag explanation was just another lie. Rather than zigzagging, he's instead following a straight line marked by Netanyahu. Meanwhile, in Syria, Netanyahu seems to have won more concessions from Trump. The U.S. military appears to be helping the remnants of Islamist forces. Still fighting the government, according to Russian officials. This accusation that has been secretly aiding the Islamist terror group with weapons of tactical and aerial reconnaissance. In other words, Trump appears to be continuing U.S. military intervention in Syria just as Netanyahu desires. Falling in line, Trump further showed that he is following Netanyahu's marching orders with the extremist speech about Iran on Friday, essentially repeating all the propaganda lines against Iran and burning whatever bridges remain toward a meaningful diplomatic approach. Trump's Iran speech was so ludicrous it almost defies serious analysts. It ranks the reckless rhetoric of President George W. Bush when he pronounced an axis of evil, with the incongruous linking of Iraq and Iran, two bitter enemies of North Korea, accompanied by Bush's bogus claim about Iraq's WMD and Iraq's alleged collaboration with Al-Qaeda. In Friday's speech, which looked like a handwork of John Bolton, one of Bush's neocon advisors, who was seen entering the White House last week, Trump repeated all the nonsense tying to Iran to Al-Qaeda, presumably thinking that the American people still don't understand that Al-Qaeda is a fanatical Sunni terror group that targets both West and Shiites. The dominant Muslim faith in Iran as heretics deserving death. And that's true. I laugh about that too. Like, don't give me this effing garbage, please. The inconvenient truth is that Al-Qaeda has long connected to Saudi Arabia, which has supported these fanatics since the 1980s, when Saudi citizen Osama bin Laden was supported in his jihad against Soviet troops in Afghanistan who were trying to protect a secular regime. So officially, the Saudi monarchy insisted that it opposed to Al-Qaeda. Saudi intelligence has used Al-Qaeda as essentially an unconventional fire force deployed to stabilize and terrorize adversaries in the region and around the world. There's a link here called the need to hold Saudi Arabia accountable, as the Israelis have developed a de facto alliance with Saudi Arabia. In recent years, they have also expressed a preference of an al-Qaeda victory in Syria, if necessary, to destroy what Michael Oren, former ambassador to the U.S., now deputy minister under Netanyahu, has described as a Shiite strategic arc running from Tehran through Damascus to Beirut. One of the frequent Israeli complaints about Iran is that it has assisted the sovereign government of Syria and in defeating Al-Qaeda and its militant allies, as well as Al-Qaeda spin-off Islamic State, which should tell you about where Netanyahu's loyalties lie. A compromised media. Yet, as dishonest as Trump's Iran speech was, the U.S. mainstream media won't criticize it harshly, as it deserves, because virtually all the important journalists and talking heads have swallowed Israel's anti-Iran propaganda whole. They have frequently repeated the canard about Iran, the world's chief sponsor of terrorism, when that entirely clearly should go to the Saudis and Qataris, if not others. The West major news outlets also have ingested all the sophisticated propaganda against the Assad government in Syria, particularly the claims about chemical weapons attacks, while ignoring evidence that Al-Qaeda operatives and their civil defense collaborators have staged attacks with the goal of provoking a direct U.S. military intervention. There's a site you should check out, a link on this website, A New Hole in Syria, Syrian Uncertainty. In his Friday speech, Trump also touted of the earliest canards about Iranian terrorism. The attack by Lebanese state Shiite militants on the U.S. Marine barracks in Beirut 1983 killed 241 Americans. When that attack happened, I was working at the Associated Press as an investigative reporter specialized in national security issues. While the precise Iranian role was not clear, what should have been obvious that the attack was not terrorism, which is classically defined as violence towards civilians to achieve a personal goal, political goal. Not only were the Marines not civilians, but the Reagan administration had made them belligerents in the Lebanese war by decision to order the USS New Jersey to shell Muslim villages. Reagan National Security Advisor Robert McFarlane, who often represented Israel's interests with the administration, with spark plugs for this mission creep, which killed Lebanese civilians and convinced Shiite militants that the United States has joined the war against them. Shiite militants struck back, sending a suicide truck bomber through the U.S. security position, demolishing the high-rise Marine barracks in Beirut. Reagan soon repositioned the surviving U.S. forces offshore. At the AP, I unsuccessfully argued against calling the raid attack terrorism, a word that other news organizations also sloppily applied, but senior Reagan officials recognized the truth. When the show started falling on the Shiites, they assumed the American referee has taken sides. General Colin Powell wrote in his memoir, My American Journey. In other words, Powell, who was then military advisor to Secretary of Defense Caspar Weinberger, also recognized that the actions of the U.S. military has altered the status of the Marines in the eyes of the Shiites. Although terrorism was always blamed on Hezbollah, the group did not officially come into existence until 1985 as a resistance movement against the Israeli occupation of Lebanon, which did not end until 2000. Opposed to Putin. So Trump is now on the path to wars with both North Korea and Iran, neither of which Russian President Putin favors. Putin, who played a key role in helping President Obama achieve a Iran nuclear agreement, now sides with the Europeans in opposition to Trump's decertification. What's neat about that, friends? The agreement may be good, though it's never been proved by the Senate. So technically, the agreement is considered unconstitutional under Article 6 of our U.S. Constitution. Look it up. Putin also favors a prompt end to the Syrian conflict with defeats of Al-Qaeda and its allies. He wants peaceful negotiations with North Korea over its desire for security against threatened American aggression. Trump is on the opposite side of all these Putin priorities. In other words, not only does the Russian gate hysteria have core evidentiary problems, but both on issues of hacking, democratic emails, and claims about suspected Russia-linked entities paying for the infinitesimal number of ads on social media, including some some about puppies, and another promoting a critical documentary about Donald Trump's golf course in Scotland. But Trump is behaving in ways that are directly contrary to Putin's desires and interests. If indeed Clinton were right about that Trump was Putin's puppet, then he would have agreed to negotiate to address the North Korean crisis, would have accepted constructive diplomacy toward Iran, and trains going by, and would have ended all U.S. support for the Syrian militants and encouraged a quick end to the bloodletting. Instead, Trump was moving in opposite directions, lining up with Netanyahu and the neocons, with some European allies referred to as Americans are really agents, although dressed up is capitulation. Netanyahu in tough guy phrasing. Trump is doing what most U.S. politicians do. They grovel before Bibi Netanyahu. And if you have any doubts about that reality, you can watch how often both Republicans and Democrats jump to their feet when Netanyahu addresses a joint session of Congress. They said bend over, they say how far, please? How far, Daddy? Or Bibi? An honor that he has received 3 times, tying him to first Prime Minister Winston Churchill. Those moments of American humiliation and almost all 135 members of Congress act like puppets on invisible strings, representing actual subservience of the U.S. government to a foreign power. That power is not Russia. President Trump is just the latest American politician to have strings yanked by the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. Well, I see that too. And it's just another example. More things change or stay the same. Mr. President, with all due respect, do yourself a favor. Read Federalist Papers 2 through 5 by John Jay, which is entitled Concerning Dangers from Foreign Force and Influences. And to all you folks who still want to bow down to Donald Trump, you should read this as well. And anyone else that's interested. Why do you have to have a country tell us what to do for the wipe our behinds? It's like that with the CIA trying to tell every country what to do. They're truly ludicrous and insane. You need to get out of foreign entanglements. You need to start being a republic, not an empire. We need to tell Israel the criminal elements in them to stick it. Yank their foreign aid like every other country in the world. So let me know I'm not being anti-Semitic. Okay? That's how I see it. Some people may get sensitive, but I don't care. John Jay will say, yes, you're right. And so will George Washington as well in his farewell address. He talked about political parties and foreign influence are dangerous to our new republic. Stop following the hype and hoopla, my friends. Be critical. Excel your conscience of awareness. Yeah. Well, looks like time is flying here, right? Yeah, time is flying. Ooh, man. I think that's going to be it for me. I thank everyone for listening. Plus, feel free to download and share us throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or you sent something that's interesting you may want to check out, whatever you do, please address your correspondences with Tacoma. Get me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Breaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, YouTube, Freedoms Network, scene.lifeminds.com, futurenet.club, patreon.com/local3rd. If you want to be a patron, donor, support me, I would love you for it. You can get me on Gab, the newest social media site. They could say is freedom version of Twitter at gab.ai. In addition, you can email me at lookyluck3@gmail.com or to encrypted ones, lookylucknumbers03@protonmail.com. Alright, my friends, once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that the demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves, keep on spreading love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.